రవి మీకు తెలుసు అంటుండే కదా సాంబయ్య గారు.
ఎవరండి?
రవి
తెలుసు
రవి
తెలుసు మా సీనియర్ మేము 1,000 రూపాయలు పిహెచ్డికి అప్పుడే ఎంఫిల్ అయిపోతా ఉంది. పిహెచ్డికి లండన్ వెళ్తా ఉంది. పవన్ ఫౌండేషన్ ఫెలోషిప్ వచ్చింది.
రవి తెలుసండి బాగా. ఏది సార్ అప్పుడే కూలిపాట్లు పడుతున్నారు? ఇంకా స్టార్ట్ కాలేదు.
ఆ, కొద్దిగా హ్యూమిడిటీ ఉంది.
ఆ,
వర్షం
ఓ,
ఉంది కానీ హ్యూమిడిటీ స్వెట్టింగ్.
ఇన్ బెంగళూరు ఇట్స్ వెరీ కోల్డ్ సార్ యాక్చువల్లీ.
బెంగళూరులో ఉన్నారా ఇప్పుడు?
It's been raining. Now last week I was in Kerala and then it was heavily pouring. And then I came back to Bengaluru and then it's here also the same thing. It's very cold. At least in Kerala it was a little pleasant because hot weather and then rain. But here it's a kind of always been a kind of cold. Rain and then cold.
అది యూనివర్సిటీ ఎట్లా పిలుస్తారు మనం?
Sorry?
పేరు యూనివర్సిటీ, ఇప్పుడు మీరు వర్క్ చేస్తున్న యూనివర్సిటీ రిపీట్ క్రియ ఎట్లా అంటారు దాన్ని?
ప్రొనౌన్స్
Kriya, same Kriya.
క్రియ అంటే మా తెలుగులో ఉన్న క్రియ అది.
అంతే అంతే.
కర్త కర్మ క్రియ.
కరెక్ట్. సార్ వీటిని ఈ లెక్చర్స్ ని ఆన్లైన్ లో పెడతారా?
యూట్యూబ్ లో లైవ్ వస్తుందా ఇప్పుడు కూడా?
ఓకే.
లైవ్ వస్తుంది. మనకి అన్ని స్టేట్ల నుంచి వస్తారు. రాజస్థాన్, జైపూర్, గుజరాత్, ఇటు యూపీ, ఎంపీ, హిమాచల్ ప్రదేశ్, ఢిల్లీ, అన్ని చోట్ల నుంచి మనకి జాయిన్ అవుతుంటారు. వాళ్ళ దీన్ని బట్టి.
రైట్.
అన్ని ఇప్పుడు ఎక్స్ట్రా అటు ఇటు ఉన్నాయి అన్ని తీసేసి యాజ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ గా లెక్చర్ ని ఎడిట్ చేసి పెడుతున్నా. అంటే మళ్ళీ ఇదంతా అనవసరం కదా.
నో డెఫినెట్లీ yes.
అంటే రేపు క్వశ్చన్ అండ్ ఆన్సర్స్ ఇవన్నీ ఉండవు. అంటే యాజ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ గా టాపిక్ లెక్చర్ అట్లా. ఇప్పటికి 10-15 ఎడిట్ అయిపోయినాయి. ఎడిట్ చేస్తాం.
ఓకే, దట్స్ గుడ్ సార్.
తర్వాత రెండోది ఏంటంటే మనం నెక్స్ట్ ఇయర్ వీఆర్ గోయింగ్ టు హ్యావ్ ఏ congregation of 75 scholars in Hyderabad.
Okay.
Whoever they gave a lecture, we will invite and appreciate, and then one meeting with all scholars. Whoever they participated in the lecture series. I think it will be January 26th, 2026.
26 would be appropriate time. Also, sir, maybe you can ask.
Last year also we did it, national conference.
Right.
On this issue. Next year we will go in a big way.
Right,
2
sir.
days or minimum 2 days we are going to do.
Sir, I'm just wondering whether you would like to consider in any way you are bringing this, scholars, uh, if some people actually at least, write something on their whatever they presented, and then compiling that work in a book
Yes,
form.
yes. Already, sorry, I missed that.
No,
That
it's no.
already we are requesting all the scholars to give
Ah,
their write-up.
I see. Okay,
Whatever,
that's good.
if something we missed here, you can also include that. That is not a thing.
Mm.
Whatever subject we are going to present here, then we are requesting the presenter to give a reason. We have to publish the 75 lectures.
Oh, wonderful, sir. That's great idea.
That is also one we can into YouTube. Second thing is publication. Third thing will be the meeting.
All right.
So, Ravi, we can start. Then people
Okay, sir.
will. Some people they are joining in YouTube. That's why.
Yeah, sure. No issues.
Please, Ravi, start. Please.
Okay, sir. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the lecture number 41. So today we have the lecture on Constant Assembly and Uniform Civil Code by Dr. Sambaya Gundameda. So I will give brief introduction about Sambaya. I think what is done. Have a lot of works done in research and he academically when you say about Lakshmi Sambaya. He studied his PhD in London. One Department of Politics and International Relations, School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, in 2013. His thesis title, Mapping Dalit Politics in Contemporary India, a study of UP and AP from an Ambedkarite perspective. It's a good topic on the Sambhyanna. We all know about his work, PhD work, and his continuous writing on his work in journals. And he completed MA and in Hyderabad Central University in Political Science Department. Presently, he is working as associate professor in Political Division School of Interwoven Arts and Science, Kriya University in Sri City, Andhra Pradesh, near to Tirupati. He also worked as assistant professor, School of Development, Arjun Premji University, Bangalore. And he also worked as assistant professor in Council of Social Development in Hyderabad. And teaching associate in Department of Political Science and International Relations. He done a lot of works in particular in Political Science Department. So into this small introduction, I would like to call Sambayana, Gunamara Sambaya. Please give your lecture, part one lecture today in the first lecture series. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi, for that wonderful introduction. Also, thank you, sir, Lakshmi Garu, for inviting me to be part of this, a wonderful project. Actually, 75 years, 75 lectures. That's amazing, and then I am grateful. I'm in fact, honored, for being part of this entire project. Thank you. So the topic today that I'm going to kind of talk about it is the Constituent Assembly and then Uniform Civil Code. But I'm sure we are all aware that Uttarakhand by enacting this Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code, and then it became the first state in India to go officially UGC 27 January this year. Actually. I've been working on Constituent Assembly debates, for a bit, for last 2 years. That goes back to this, my interest in this, cow slaughter issue, and then that led to kind of, looking at, the religious freedom, and also the Uniform Civil Code. Actually, I want to understand, like, how the members in the Constituent Assembly settled some of these issues. For example, it's not that we are just encountering some of these problems relating to UGC or cow slaughter or religious freedom, and then also the Uniform Civil Code. All these issues were there, at the time of, like, before the formation of the Constituent Assembly, and then during the Constituent Assembly. So I just wanted to kind of, in a diversity state country like ours, how did the these diverse voices actually kind of came together and then like, worked out some sort of solution. I wouldn't say like completely settled, but at least some a pragmatic way of, like, give and take. So with that, actually, I want to understand, and obviously, this talk inspired by, or background to this Uniform Civil Code uses Uttarakhand's. Now, so I want to understand, by looking at this Constitutional Assembly debates, my aim is that I, in fact, and I believe, I increasingly came to believe that these debates actually provide valuable insights into the framer's interpretation and offers guidance relevant to contemporary context. So the inquiry, my inquiry in this talk, or kind of whatever I've been writing, is guided by, for this talk, three fundamental questions. First one is kind of should a secular state accommodate the personal loss of culturally diverse communities? Now, does the UGC conflict with the constitutional right to religious freedom? Now, the third question is that in a democracy, is it imperative to obtain the consent of affected communities before enacting legislation that directly affect their personal and religious practices? Now, modern Indian society, in fact, it has inherited three distinct legal traditions. One is Hindu, Muslim, and British, each shaped by unique cultural and historical contexts. In ancient Hindu society, the state did not intervene in religious matters, with society itself serving as the primary authority. Hindu sages, revered as lawgivers, formulated rules that extended beyond religious practices to encompass ethics, social conduct, and governance. Although closely linked to religion, Hindu law was fundamentally rooted in social customs and traditions. This alignment ensured that the state acted as a representative of societal values rather than an independent entity, highlighting the primacy of society over state intervention in legal and religious affairs. Islamic jurisprudence exemplifies the complete integration of law and religion. As James Bryce aptly notes, I quote here, in Islam, law is religion and religion is law, because both have the same source and equal authority, being both contained in the same divine revelation. This highlights its theoretical foundation, where legal and religious mandates are inseparable. During Muslim rule in India, while the Islamic civil code applied to Muslims in areas like inheritance and marriage, the Hindu adhered to their own laws. This arrangement reflects a pragmatic legal pluralism, balancing the application of Islamic principles with respect for the autonomy of non-Muslim communities in managing their personal and civil affairs. The British colonial period introduced significant changes to India's personal laws, particularly through codification. The British sought to provide legal uniformity in an increasingly diverse society while also respecting the religious laws of different communities. Hindu and Muslim personal laws were codified and institutionalized into Anglo-Hindu and Anglo-Muhammadan laws, which attempted to preserve religious practices while adapting them to colonial legal standards. However, The British also selectively intervened to reform or abolish practices deemed inhumane or incompatible with their legal principles. For instance, the Bengal Sati Regulation, 1829, outlawed the practice of sati, while the Hindu Widows Remarriage Act, 1857, aimed to promote remarriage for Hindu widows. Similarly, the Child Marriage Restraint Act in 1929 sought to curb child marriage in Hindu communities. For Muslims, the British passed significant laws such as the Shariat Act in 1937, which codified aspects of Islamic law and granted Muslims the right to seek remedies under their religious laws. Additionally, the Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act 1939 addressed the specific needs of Muslim women, providing a legal framework for divorce and marriage dissolution. While these colonial interventions played a role in reforming certain practices, they also helped to consolidate religious identities and personal laws in India. Now, the question of Uniform Civil Code first arose during the Constituent Assembly deliberations on the draft articles on fundamental rights submitted to the Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights by K. M. Munshi and Dr. B. R. Ambedkar. Both supported a common civil code, both Ambedkar and then Munshi, arguing that it would ensure equal treatment of all citizens, irrespective of religion or caste. While Munshi proposed that no individual should be subject to any custom or usage imposing any civil disability on the basis of caste, religion, or other distinctions, Ambedkar's draft emphasized that all citizens should be entitled to the full and equal benefits of all laws and be subject to the same penalties, underscoring the importance of uniformity in legal frameworks. The formal proposal for a UGC came from Minnu Masani during a meeting of the Subcommittee on Fundamental Rights on 28 March 1947. Drawing inspiration from both Munshi's and Ambedkar's drafts, Masani argued that a common civil code was vital for national unity and the modernization of Indian society, as it would eliminate divisive personal laws based on religious customs. This proposal generated support from several prominent assembly members, particularly Rajkumar Amrut Kaur, Ans Mehta, and Ambedkar. However, the majority rejected the proposal, arguing that subject of a common civil code fell outside the purview of fundamental rights. In a subsequent meeting on 30th March 1947, held in the absence of Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, the sole Muslim member, the subcommittee decided to include the issue of the Uniform Civil Code in the non-binding directive principles of state policy. Azad's absence proved significant as he had long championed the preservation of India's composite culture and religious diversity, advocated for the protection of personal laws. Azad also voiced concern about the potential erosion of religious autonomy and minority rights. Despite Azad's objections, the majority's vote for a UGC signaled a shift in the Assembly's approach to the issue. Now, by April 1947, the Uniform Civil Code debate had deeply divided the Constituent Assembly, while the Subcommittee on Fundamental Rights emphasized the importance of implementing a UCC to promote India's consolidation and unification. In contrast, the Subcommittee on Minorities, responsible for addressing the concerns of religious and linguistic minorities, adopted a more cautious stance. In its interim report of April 1947, the Minority Subcommittee recognized the UCC as eminently desirable, but emphasized the need for sensitivity to minority concerns, recommending that its implementation be entirely on a voluntary basis. Now, the subcommittee also stressed that any law should accommodate the pluralistic nature of Indian society, where distinct religious practices were deeply embedded in cultural traditions. However, Members like Amrit Kaur, Ransa Mehta, and Minnu Masani expressed dissatisfaction with the conclusions of the subcommittee. They argued that the existence of various religious personal laws kept the nation divided into watertight compartments. In a dissenting note, they criticized relegating the UCC to the directive principles, describing the letter as window dressing without real substance. They advocated for enacting the UCC as mandatory provision within 5 to 10 years, emphasizing its importance for social progress and the development of the state. Now, the early debates over the UCC in the subcommittees underscored the inherent tension between the desire for a national unity and the commitment to safeguard religious and cultural diversity. The decision to place the UCC within the diverse principles represented, the decision to place the UCC within the directive principles represented a compromise, balancing the aspiration for legal uniformity with the recognition of India's pluralistic social fabric. However, this decision also excluded meaningful consultation with the members from religious minorities groups. This exclusion highlights the high-handedness of UCC proponents who prioritize their vision of national integration over inclusivity. Such unilateralism became especially evident in the Assembly's debates on 23rd November 1948, where the concerns of minority communities were sidelined in favor of advancing uniform legal framework. This episode illustrates the complexity of reconciling social secular ideals with the lived experiences of a deeply diverse society. Now, between the advisory committee's report on minority rights and the introduction of the draft article that pertains to UCC in the Constituent Assembly, India experienced profound political and social transformations. The partition of India on 14th August 1947 was a cataclysmic event, resulting in the deaths of approximately 1 million people and the displacement of an estimated 15 million people. This upheaval left an indelible scar on the nation's collective psyche, bolstering conservative elements within the Indian National Congress while tempering its more progressive factions. The socio-political consequences of partitions were pivotal in shaping the policies of the newly independent India. Beyond redrawing the subcontinent's political boundaries, partition significantly altered the demographic and ideological composition of the Constituent Assembly. The migration of most Muslim League members elected to the Constituent Assembly to Pakistan drastically reduced minority representation, leaving the Indian National Congress with an overwhelming 82% of majority. This numerical dominance diminished the necessity for compromises with the minority groups and eroded earlier commitments to safeguard minority interests. Particularly, proportional representation, joint electorates, and the protection of personal laws. Congress leaders, increasingly began to regard minority safeguards as colonial relics designed to perpetuate communal divisions. The abolition of separate electorates, in particular, was reframed as a critical measure to foster national unity. Jawaharlal Nehru, a leading advocate of this shift, argued that dismantling these structures were essential for establishing a secular democracy. Okay, I'm going to quote here Jawaharlal Nehru. Doing away with this reservation business is not only a good thing in itself, good for all concerned, more especially for the minorities, but psychologically too, it is a very good move for the nation and the world. Quote in it. Now, Muslim members of the assembly, however, voiced concern that eliminating institutional safeguards such as separate electorates would lead to the political marginalization of their community. They argued that such measures would exclude capable leaders from their community, a fear later validated by political developments in independent India. Nevertheless, Congress leadership dismissed these apprehensions, prioritizing abstract ideals such as secularism and national unity over practical implications for minority groups. The introduction of the UCC within this context reflect a distinctly majoritarian ethos and highlighted the limited inclusivity of the Constituent Assembly. So on 27th and 23rd November 1948, I mean, this is after independence, right? The Constituent Assembly of India engaged in a pivotal animated discussion concerning draft Article 35, which proposed a uniform civil code. The draft article stated, the state shall endeavor to secure for the citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. This is the one statement, one line or draft. The deliberations revealed a deeply polarized assembly with proponents and opponents presenting impassioned arguments rooted in legal, cultural, and ideological convictions. Notably, the debate underscored a palpable sense of apprehensions among Muslim members, many of whom feared the potential erosion of their religious and cultural identity. The debate revolved around four key themes: secularism, democracy, religious freedom, and consent. So I'll just kind of, very quickly take you through these, four key argumentation or themes. Now, as the Vice President of the Assembly initiated the discussion on draft Article 35, Muhammad Ismail Khan, a Muslim League member from Madras, voiced strong opposition. He expressed concern about the implications of the UCC for a secular state, asserting that a truly secular state must refrain from interfering in the religious practices and personal laws of its citizens. For Khan, personal laws practiced by communities for generations and ages were not merely codified norms, but intrinsic elements of religious and cultural identity. He argued that one of the fundamental responsibilities of a secular state was to preserve religious freedoms, including personal laws rooted in religious doctrines. To strengthen his argument, Khan cited international examples such as Yugoslavia, a nation characterized by ethnic and religious diversity. He noted that Muslims in Yugoslavia were permitted to govern family law and personal status matters according to their customs. This, he argued, demonstrated the feasibility of respecting minority practices within a unified national framework. Now, joining the debate, Mahbub Ali Beg Sahib Bahadur, another Muslim League member from Madras, rejected the notion that secularism required uniformity in personal laws, language, and culture. He asserted that secularism demanded respect for the autonomy of communities in managing their personal laws. He opined, I quote here, in a secular state, citizens belonging to different communities must have the freedom to practice their own religion, observe their own life, and their personal laws should be applied to them. End of the quote. His interpretation of secularism focused on pluralism rather than homogenization, advocating for a system that accommodated cultural diversity. Hussein Imam, a Muslim League member from Bihar, echoing these sentiments, argued that secularism did not entail the rejection of religion, but required the state to maintain equidistance from all religions. He warned of the alienation and mistrust that might arise from overriding minority rights, stressing the need for explicit safeguards to protect personal laws. In stark contrast, K.M. Munshi, a Congress member from Bombay and a strong advocate of the UGC, in fact, he presented that draft, if you remember, he rejected the pluralistic interpretation of secularism advocated by Muslim members. Munshi argued that a UCC was essential to consolidate, India's fragmented personal laws into a unified framework, fostering national unity and creating a genuinely secular society. Asserting on this, he noted, I quote, the point, however, is this: whether we are going to consolidate and unify our personal laws in such a way that the way of life
of the whole country may in course of time be unified and secular. Now, for Munshi, secularism was not about accommodating diversity, but about forging a collective identity that transcended religion and cultural divisions. Although both proponents and opponents of the UCC grounded their arguments in the concept of secularism, if you observe, understand, and know properly, they approached it from fundamentally divergent perspectives. Muslim members articulated a pluralistic vision of secularism, emphasizing the state's responsibility to honor India's rich cultural diversity. In contrast, Munshi championed a vision of secularism that sought to achieve cultural homogenization through legal uniformity. The pluralistic approach advocated by Muslim members aligned with Rajiv Bhargava's theory of positive secularism, which distinguishes Indian secularism from the French concept of laicite. Unlike the French model, which strictly separates religion from the state, Indian secularism strive to mediate the relationship between religion and the state while ensuring justice and preserving cultural diversity. Muslim members call for legal pluralism, exemplified this framework, advocating for the accommodation of diverse personal laws within a secular legal structure. Munshi's vision of legal uniformity, however, raises significant challenges. How can a deeply pluralistic society like India transition to a unified legal framework without erasing its cultural diversity, right? Moreover, whose traditions and practices should dominate shaping this uniform identity? Scholars like Will Kimlicka critique such assimilationist approaches, arguing that imposing a single legal framework often marginalizes minority identities. Kimlicka highlights the necessity of recognizing and accommodating minority identities. He argues for the necessity of recognizing and accommodating distinct cultural practices to achieve genuine equality in multicultural society. Similarly, feminist scholars like Flavia Agnes have critiqued the historical process of legal codification in India, noting its tendencies to reflect majoritarian biases while marginalizing minority traditions and voices. Now, the second theme in the debate on the UCC revolved around the concept of democracy. Much like the divergent understanding of the concept of secularism, both proponents and opponents of the UCC presented contrasting interpretation of democracy, each grounded in distinct understanding of diversity and equality. One of the central ideas around which Muslim members construed their opposition within the broader democratic principles of diversity. Hussain Imam emerged as a prominent advocate of their perspective, emphasizing that India's cultural, religion, and regional diversities were not only its definite features, but also key factors that made the implementation of uniform civil code impractical. Imam underscored the unique needs of various communities, such as the Adivasi population, who relied on distinct personal laws to safeguard their rights and preserve their cultural heritage. He argued that imposing uniform code would jeopardize their identity and disrupt the delicate balance of India's pluralistic society. Citing the special legal provisions for scheduled tribes, which respect traditional modes of land ownership, the factors which contribute to the differences among different people of India. He believed that a common legal framework for these matters would reduce disparities between communities and promote a sense of shared national identity. He also stated that legal uniformity would create a more cohesive society and encourage mutual understanding among communities. Adding to that debate, Munshi claimed that the lack of a common civil code was a key obstacle to consolidating India as a unified nation state. Integrating India's diverse communities required, according to Munshi, a legal framework transcending religious boundaries, wherein religion would be confined to the private sphere. The personal law would be governed by secular principles. He argued that a uniform civil code would facilitate the construction of a uniform Indian identity, helping to mend the fragmented social fabric left by colonialism. Now, as one might have anticipated, Muslim members did not share the enthusiasm of proponents of the UCC. They believed that a UCC could endanger harmony rather than engender it. Ismail Khan, while politely rejecting Alladi's argument, maintained that if the purpose of UCC to secure harmony through uniformity, then it is a futile to regiment civil laws of the people, including personal law. Now, Khan argued that with great conviction that such regimentation not only results in discontent among all affected parties, but also disrupt harmony among various communities in society. Instead, he asserted the assembly that he assured the assembly if people are allowed to follow their own personal law, there would be no discontent or dissatisfaction. While Munshi's vision appeared valid, implementing in a deeply religious society such as India, where every aspect of life influenced by religion remains a significant challenge. Munshi himself acknowledged the complexity of this issue during the Assembly's debate over the incorporation of the term secularism in the preamble later to the Constitution of India. He characterized Indians as people with deeply religious moorings. Nevertheless, Munshi's vision was rooted in the idea of a legal secularism, which seeks to separate religious law from civil governance while ensuring that the state upholds the values of inequality and justice for all citizens. Now, I'll just kind of quickly, I need some, more 5 or 10 minutes more. The third central theme in the Constitutional Assembly debate over the UCC was the principle of religious freedom, articulated in Article 19. Now, it's kind of, from 35 to kind of became 19. Now, Muslim members in particular voiced concern with, that the UCC could encroach upon the fundamental right of religious freedom. The exchanges revealed profound differences in interpreting the relationship between religious freedom and the state's authority to legislate personal laws. Now, Nazaruddin Ahmad, a prominent critic of the UCC, framed these objections around protection against guaranteed under Article 19. Now, the article affirmed that subject to public order, morality, and health, and to the other provisions of this part, all persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and the right freely to profess, practice, and propagation religion. This is the draft article of the religious right to religious freedom. Now, Ahmad acknowledged that while certain religious practices could be harmful, the Constitution already provided a mechanism to regulate or restrict them through conditions tied to public order, morality, and health. So Ahmad argued that UCC risked creating a conflict between Article 19, right to religious freedom, while safeguarding fundamental rights, and Article 35, that placed in the directive principles, UCC. He expressed concern that while directive principles were non-justifiable, their symbolic endorsement could embolden the state to overreach in legislating personal laws, undermining the constitutional guarantee of religious freedom. What we are kind of observing these days. Now, Ismail Khan, the proponents of the UCC, however, they did not agree with the arguments and the claims of Muslim members. Munshi, for instance, challenged the interpretation of Article 19 advanced by its opponents. Munshi argued that the article itself provided the state with ample authority to regulate religious practices when these intersected with secular activities or contravened the goals of social welfare reforms. So he sort of cited in the various articles. We don't have to kind of go into the details of that. Now, in any case, to substantiate his argument, his claim, Munshi highlighted the systematic discrimination against women prevalent in Hindu society, at the time. According to Munshi, if what he was trying to say that if personal laws are kind of allowed to kind of practiced by various communities. What happens, it's not just kind of Muslims, even the Hindus are also will be affected. And then he's kind of bringing the negative aspects, for instance, like so uh, Hindu law permits any amount of discrimination against women, right? Particularly in the matters of property rights, marriage, and inheritance. This is not my claim. This is kind of Munshi's claim. If such practices were shielded under religious freedom, he warned no legislature, including parliament, could enact reform to elevate the status of women to equality with men. Now, Munshi's arguments pointed to a broader issue, the tension between religious traditions and the state obligation to ensure equality and social justice. So he viewed the UCC as a necessary mechanism for addressing gender inequality across all communities, not just within Hinduism. The whole object of the article, he argued, is that as and when Parliament thinks proper, an attempt may be made to unify the personal laws of the country. So by emphasizing the secular nature of laws governing civil matters, Munshi believed that the UCC could serve as a tool for unifying Indian society under principles of equality and fairness, transcending the boundaries of religious affiliations. Now, I'll just kind of skip other parts. I want kind of go directly into how the issue has been kind of intervened by Ambedkar and others. Now, Ambedkar, the chairman of the doctrine committee, he was the final speaker on the contentious issue of the Uniform Civil Code. Recognizing that all his colleagues, Munshi and Iyer, in fact, if you kind of observe, earlier also, if you could recall, Ambedkar kind of was in the side of this Uniform Civil Code. He is in favor. He also, along with this proponents, advocates of this Uniform Civil Code, he argued that this is kind of an important provision for unifying the nation and all that. And he also kind of every person. I mean, his larger concern was kind of equality. Each and every individual of Indian society should be kind of followed by the same judged by the same laws and regulations, rather than kind of different laws for different people. He was under that opinion and all that. That is what, at least, like when he presented his draft to the Fundamental Rights Committee. Now, when he spoke, now Munshi and Iyer, he recognized his colleagues, had already articulated, the benefits of a civil code. So therefore, Ambedkar didn't think that, he wants to kind of elaborate on this, why Uniform Civil Code is useful and so on and so forth. However, he wanted to kind of, focus on two critical observations. Number one, first, Ambedkar challenged the assertion by certain Muslim members of the Constituent Assembly that Muslim personal law was immutable and uniformly applied throughout India. Even I think the some of the Muslim members also kind of arguing in the same lines. But I think Ambedkar challenges here. So he highlighted that until 1937, Muslims in the Northwest Frontier province followed Hindu law in matters of succession, and it was only through legislative intervention in 1939 that Shariat law was replaced Hindu law in this region. Similarly, in other parts of India, such as the United Provinces, Central Provinces, and Bombay, Muslim adhered to Hindu succession laws prior to the introduction of uniformity through the Shariat Act of 1937. What we need to understand is that during the British time, although in 1937 they implemented Shariat law, but then not all the Muslims were kind of following this Shariat Act and all. Some of them were actually kind of under Muslim under what you call the Hindu law as well. So to substantiate his point further, Ambedkar cited examples from North Malabar, where both Hindus and Muslims historically followed the Marmukkatayam system, a matriarchal tradition. He argued that the certain aspects of Hindu law considered most suitable for the nation could be universally applied, not due to their religious origin, but because of their practical value. He urged the assembly to adopt a pragmatic approach, the one which is flexible and adaptable legal framework rather than the one rooted in rigid dogma. This argument finds resonance in scholars, critiques of scholarly critiques of rigid religious personal laws. For example, like Mark Galanter and Sylvia Wathak have both highlighted how personal laws in colonial and post-colonial India were often codified in ways that amplified inter-community differences despite the fluidity of actual practices. Now, second, addressing Hussein Imam's concerns about the feasibility and desirability of a uniform civil code in a country as diverse as India, Ambedkar dismissed such apprehension as misplaced. Right? He pointed out that India already possessed a uniform legal framework in several domains, such as the Indian Penal Code, sorry, yeah, he wanted to kind of explain that India is already kind of following this uniform civil code. Sorry, just give me a second. Now, the Indian Penal Code and also the Criminal Procedure Code 1898, the Negotiable Instrument Act of 1881, and the Transfer of Property Act, several laws. What he was trying to say that India was kind of already in uniform civil code, in the sense like following, everybody kind of follow this Indian Penal Code and then Criminal Procedure Act and so on, all of which applied uniformly across the nation. He described the lack of uniformity in marriage and succession laws as merely a little corner of the legal system yet to be harmonized. Advocates of Article 35, he argued, sought to address this gap, paving the way for uniform civil code that Ambedkar considered an inevitable evolution of Indian legal frame reform. Now, at the same time, I think this is very, very important for us. Ambedkar was sensitive to the fears of minority communities. In order to allay their fears, Ambedkar emphasized that Article 35, the Uniform Civil Code, neither obligates the state to abolish personal laws, nor enforced a common civil code upon all citizens. Instead, it merely mandated the state to endeavor to secure a civil code, thus allowing for gradual consensual implementation. Referring to the idea of limited sovereignty, Ambedkar underscored that legislative power did not entail the state to disregard the sentiments of its diverse communities, right? Cautioning the state against any unilateral approach towards minorities that could provoke unrest. Ambedkar emphatically noted, government can exercise its power in such a manner as to provoke the Muslim community to rise in rebellion. I think it would be a mad government if it did so. Now, this perspective reflects Ambedkar's broader commitment to reconciling state power with the cultural and religious sensitivity in a pluralistic society. Now, Ambedkar's approach to the Uniform Civil Code diverged significantly from Munshi's framing, which tied to adoption of the will of a parliament majority. Now, Munshi kind of say that now we have agreed, and then parliament can kind of make laws and all that, right? Instead, Ambedkar advocated a voluntary and phased implementation, drawing on the precedent of Shariat Act of 1937. This legislation allowed Muslims in certain regions to opt into Islamic law through a formal declaration. Now, similarly, when Shariat Law Act was kind of implemented, not everybody was kind of part of that, right? Following this Islamic law. And so whoever kind of want to kind of follow Shariat Act or move into Shariat Act, they have to kind of give a declaration to the officer, and then they will be, from then onwards, they'll be judged according to this, Shariat Act and so on and so forth. And so he was actually kind of, drawing from the historical precedents, and then, you can actually, follow the same thing. Even if there's a uniform civil code, then you have to kind of, decide. I mean, Ambedkar wants to kind of give the final say to the people themselves, not the kind of state implementing its wish on the people, but let the people decide voluntarily what they want. If they would they want to kind of be part of this uniform civil code, or they follow Shariat Act. Yeah, that's what. So Ambedkar proposed this individual could voluntarily adopt the uniform code, ensuring that its application would be gradual and consensual. This insistence on voluntarism reflects Ambedkar's broader vision of legal reform as a process of persuasion and consensus rather than coercion. So his emphasis on dialogue and inclusion sought to reconcile the constitutional objective of legal uniformity with India's pluralistic ethos. In other words, Ambedkar position in the Constitutional Assembly encapsulated a vision of legal reform that was both pragmatic and inclusive. His emphasis on dialogue, voluntarism, and gradual change reflected as enduring commitment to balancing the legal rights of individuals with the cultural autonomy of communities. His approach offers a valuable lessons for navigating the complexity of pluralism and social justice in modern democratic societies. When the amendment in draft Article 35 proposed by Muslim members were presented for a vote in the Constitutional Assembly, Ambedkar unequivocally, he rejected them. The Muslim members wanted kind of some changes in this, but he completely rejected them, stating that they lacked substance. Apart from dissenting Muslim members, the rest of the assembly appeared to support Ambedkar's stance, signaling a consensus on the matter. Now, ultimately, the assembly adopted the draft Article 35 in its original form without incorporating the proposed amendments. Now, the provision later became Article 44 of the Indian Constitution, enshrining the directives for the state to endeavor towards a UCC. Now, in conclusion, the Constituent Assembly debates on the Uniform Civil Code offer a vivid preview of the contentious discussion that would follow in post-independence India regarding personal laws and the UCC itself. Munshi anticipated arguments that would later be championed by Hindu nationalists in landmark cases such as the Shah Banu case, Shah Banu Begum, and Shaira Banu, as well as in the ongoing debates on the Uniform Civil Code. In our times, the question posed by Naziruddin Ahmad, why not first use constitutional mechanism to eradicate discriminatory practices against women before implementing a common civil code for diverse communities, remains profoundly relevant today. The deliberations in the assembly reflect a broader spectrum of perspectives on the UCC, highlighting both ideological divides and shared commitment to democratic principles and the ideals of a secular state. Despite their opposing views, proponents and opponents alike anchored their arguments in the value of inclusivity and justice. Importantly, the insights of leaders such as Mahbub Ali Beg, Naziruddin Ahmad, and Ambedkar underscore the critical importance of securing the consent of affected communities and emphasizing the majority's duty to protect minority rights. These deliberations provide enduring lessons for contemporary policymakers and advocates of democracy. They remind us that the path to reform in a pluralistic society must be guided by dialogue, consent building, and an unwavering commitment to justice and equality. As India continues to grapple with the complexity of implementing a UCC, the wisdom of the Constituent Assembly serves as a beacon for navigating the challenges of balancing tradition, diversity, and progress. So the discussion in the Constituent Assembly remind us that meaningful reform in a pluralistic society must be rooted in dialogue, consensus building, and an unwavering commitment to justice and equality. Thank you. Jai Bhim.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much, Lakshman sir.
Thank you, Sambhaya garu. I think it's a very in-depth study and understanding of the debates of Constituent Assembly about the Uniform Civil Code. I think it's a very new thing nobody is referring. I think it's a very good exposure to have attending this meeting. I think thank you very much. I be inviting the question and answer session. Anybody can ask questions to direct Sambaya garu. Please. Hello.
I think people are satisfied with the presentation. I think don't you?
I think a new subject, na? That's why.
Yes.
Satish Kumar garu.
Yes, Dr. Samji, you have presented very well.
Thank
So,
Sir, please
Introduce
introduce
yourself,
question
sir,
and
first.
also part where no question.
Thank you.
Satish Kumar garu.
Introduce yourself, sir.
Satish Kumar garu is representing the Center for Dalit Rights from Jaipur.
I see. Okay, sir. James.
Jai Bhim, sir.
He is also advocate.
Right, sir. Yes.
If nobody is there, we can conclude.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Sambagar. I think it's a very good presentation. Another thing, I already told you, this could be going to digital, and we are also requesting you and other presenters to send a write-up on this issue. The pages is not an issue. How many? Another thing is, I want to request you, it's not confined to your today presentation. You can add also. Then we cannot say everything here. Then you can add whatever you missing here. You
Yeah.
can add. That the third thing, it will be the second thing, it will be publication also. It should come. We have to start asking the people. Already we told we are going to constitute a committee also, editing committee. Like you also, it will be there. It's good for us also to editing group. Then third thing is we are going to have a congregation or scholars meet at Hyderabad, 26 January 2026. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. You are present. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Jai Bhim.